So, and it's fascinating that your story and your life, right, has really shaped this perspective. And I remember when we spoke last, there's some crazy stuff that I remember you telling me, and maybe you can talk to the audience a little bit about this. You were saying as a teenager, and I think this is kind of important to know as well, right? As in everybody's human, and they can get discouraged, or they can be, in a position where they're like, okay, I can do this, I can do anything, and maybe, those, like, you were talking about, growing up as a teenager and doing the bull riding and all that crazy
Oh
stuff,
Lord.
which I wouldn't
Yeah.
do, right? And as a completely sighted person, I would say that's just insane. So just tell us a little bit about that story. Tell, just for the audience.
Well, here's a fun sound bite. I would sum that all up in being fearless to the point of failure, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really what it is. So yeah, when I was a teenager, I wouldn't say I was cocky, but I was in essence fearless because I was always willing to try almost anything. Who knows? I might be good at it, right? You don't know it until you try. So at one point in my life, I was talked into riding a bull at a very small town rodeo, and I was super confident. I climbed over the chute and I got sat on top of the bull, and I'm like, "This isn't all that hard." Well, keep in mind the bull's not moving at that point. I had all my stuff wrapped up. Somebody showed me how to wrap it up and showed me where to place my hands, and I was like, "You know what? This isn't that bad. I'm strong. I work out. This is not a big thing." And then the gate opened, and I went from, well, I didn't have time to think. Gate opened, it was like one, and I was on the ground. Boom. So I wasn't fearful until I was on the ground
Right.
because, because in the chute, there's people around me. I can questions. Everything's moving a little bit slower and I can reassess, I can adjust my weight. I was pretty confident I was doing all the right things. But once I was on the ground, I wasn't able to, I couldn't see, right? And all I'm hearing is hooves around me. I don't know where the fence is. I don't know if I should get up. I did have people that told me to stay down, thank goodness. But it was so disorienting that I did not know how to self correct, there was no way of going back. Right? It's not like I could go back and readjust. So the pickup men picked me up and they rode me around the ring, and as if I was a real cowboy, which I was just kind of sheepishly embarrassed. But it really got me thinking, later on in life, even how many times have I gotten so excited about a project, or have many of us gotten excited about a project that we just know in our heart of hearts that this is going to work. And then when it doesn't, do
Right.
we do we find ourselves disoriented, or do we know what to do?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's pretty human, right? Is we like, for whatever reason, to attach ourselves to certain things, and dealing with that is quite difficult. So how? I mean, I just can't imagine how frightening that would be, that you can't see anything and all you can hear is hooves around you and a several thousand-pound bull bucking around. I mean, that just sounds like my idea of
Yeah.
hell. So what
Oh, it was.
what did you learn, if anything, from that experience? What was your takeaway?
Well, it was a lesson that I probably didn't learn in that moment, but I learned long later in life that
Right.
you have to look at things through multiple lenses. You have to get the right support, the right resources, and be able to walk through things methodically and understand your contingency plans. Right? What's your plans A, B, C, and D when things go wrong? I'd love to say that I learned all those things in that moment, but I think that was probably the tipping point where I had to learn those things. And it really got me thinking too later in life about not only that experience but several others where I was so excited. And we get this at work all the time. We get married to our project, I call it,
Hmm.
where you
Hmm.
just can't see anything else and you need other perspectives. And so when I think about my life and just very briefly thinking about the different lenses. So, I mean, I grew up on a hog farm, single dad. Mom passed away when I was 8 months old. Lost my sight when I was 6. So I've had, at an early stage, I had a very short period of time where I had to look at things from multiple windows, right? Um, and through multiple ways. And when you fast forward to high school, college, and the workplace, uh, I've had to train myself in many ways to be super curious. Could we look at this a different way? Could we look at this from a different angle? Um, and one of the things I encourage my teams to do now, and most of our organization actually, is differing to get those differing experiences and speak to those different lenses. So if you're working on a project, reach out to somebody who's not even related to the project. Let them know what you're doing and say, would you do it this way? Where are my pitfalls? Because then before you try it, you're at least prepared. And then when you do try it and something goes right, you can measure it and realize that it went right. And if it goes wrong, you can assess it and then go back to those people that gave you different perspectives and say, here's what I learned, here's where it went wrong. What do you think? Because if you look through just one lens, it's a tunnel vision effect, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really what I've kind of learned just through my own personal
Right.
experiences is there's more than one way to do things.
Right. So let's maybe just pull on that thread a little bit, because I think this was one of the things that really struck me in previous conversations is just how, in some ways, right, it's just sheer circumstance, um, but you haven't allowed things, to basically get on top of you. You've found other ways around to the point where this is um, second nature almost to you now. So can you think of any examples of where in your recent past? Obviously, the place where you work now is a very large employer, um, where this kind of different perspective has been really useful and led to, let's say, better project outcomes.
Yeah, and in many ways, it happens every day. So I'll give you a couple examples.
Right.
One from a very tactical perspective, and one from the business side. So a while back, this is actually my former employer, but they were working with a vendor on a product launch, and the the product itself, it was a food product, and it had all the instructions on it with multiple ways of cooking the product, etc. And I was fortunate enough to be uh, invited to the discussion and some of the field testing. And when I got there, I just asked them, "How am I going to cook this?" And they're like, "Oh, you do this, 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 and this." I'm like, "Right, but if I was home alone pulling this out of the box, how would I know?" And and so they're like, "Man, I really don't know." Now I've got tools and devices that I can use to be able to read those things, but maybe not everybody does. And so we integrated a QR code. And by implementing that QR code, now I can pull up the instructions. Here's what's cool. When you look at things through a different lens, sometimes you solve for that person's lens, but you also provide benefits to a number of people outside of that lens. So by us incorporating the QR code, we were able to add in recipes where this item might be used in
Ah,
different ways.
okay.
We were able to link it to the app so you could purchase other things if you wanted, from those recipes. We were able to people with maybe some lower vision issues could then enlarge the print or the font so they could read it without having to try to read it on the package itself. It just opened up a tremendous amount of doors, right? All because we looked at it through, yes, my lens, but what other benefits does it have for other people? A very recent example is I'm over here in our people operations center, and I'm not trying to throw our team under a bus, and I've already talked to them, but we have enhanced our cafeteria. So it's a kiosk based. You order, it's very efficient. Your food's ready by the time you finish paying. It's very efficient. but it's a touch screen, and there's no headphone jack. It is 100% inaccessible to me. So I've talked with our facilities team, and we are going to look into what the vendor has. But by adding audio confirmations and audio cues to this device, we're also going to solve an issue where we have a number of people who may not be able to read the print the way it is, and they can't enlarge it. So audio will be helpful. Also, we have people that are uh, a little uneasy about whether or not their credit card went through. And by having those audio cues, they'll have that audio confirmation that the credit card did go through. So there's a few additional benefits, even though the original ask was through my lens, but it impacts others as well.